Welcome! Today I'm going to try and make the biggest bowl I have ever made. It's not like I haven't done big bowls in the past, like this one. But every time I try and make a bigger bowl, I get surprised of how much it shrinks and how much the wall raises. So it never turns out as big as it could be and as I want it to be. So this is what I'm going to attempt in this video. Now, to make a really wide bowl, there's a couple of things you need to consider. Besides the actual shape of it, of course, if you have a wide base, then it's easier to make the bowl wide. If it's a very narrow base, then you're going to have a lot of clay hanging out there, and it's very likely that it will flop. I tried that several times. So I'm going to make it with a very wide base, but I still want like a curved inside. The other thing is that when you make it wide, because it's going to be much wider than this bed. This bed is about 35 centimeter, and I'm aiming for something like 60. I'm going to get back to that in a second. So there's going to be a lot of clay hanging out there. And to carry that weight, I need to maintain some thickness in the bottom. I know potters that can make it really thin down here and still make it wide. I'm not good enough for that. So I'm not going to be so concerned with how heavy the pot is going to be to begin with, because I can always trim in the food a little more when it's a little hard. I will do that. But before I start throwing the pot, I need to know how wide I can actually make it. How much can I fit in my kiln? So first, I'll go and measure that. The kiln I have is a Niveterm, a German Niveterm, 190 liter. It's one of the biggest top loaders that they have. But to make sure that I don't make my bowl too wide, I have to make sure how wide it is. So let's take a look at that. The total width of this kiln inside is about 60 centimeter. But on top of that, I also need a little bit of space for my fingers to actually put the pot in there. But on the other side of it, I have to account for the shrinkage. So this is not a very accurate, very specific calculation, but I have to sort of guess my way into this. But now at least I know that the total width is 60 centimeter, so anything above that won't fit. Okay, so now we're ready to throw the bowl. Please wish me luck. Anyway, I'm going to throw it in a high-grogged stoneware clay that I like a lot. It's from a local supplier, from Cerame. I think it's called 1286 or something. You probably can't get it exactly that number anywhere else, but it's a light gray, high grogged stoneware. It's very stable and strong, and it's good for a wide bowl like this. I'm going to be using a lot of clay. I don't know exactly how much it is. There's even more than this, probably close to 10 kilo. As I said, I'm not going to be too concerned with how heavy it's going to be to begin with. I can always trim it down. Right now, I'm just focused on reaching my goal of making it super wide. But centering 10 kilo is a lot of work. I could do it. I've done it before. But instead of centering all of it at once, I'm going to center it in two sections. So first I'm going to center this piece. I don't know what it is, maybe 6 kilo. And then I have another piece, it's a little bit smaller. And I'm going to put that on top and center that. So let's go ahead. As always, especially with bigger lumps of clay, I always start with tap centering or clap centering to just try and push it into precision. The more centered it is before I start throwing it, the easier it will be. You see, it already looks not completely centered, but at least better than it was when I just put it on the bed. Now, as I explained before, when I put my bowl on the bat, I usually shape it like a reverse pyramid, because then when I put it down, all the air will be pushed out so we don't trap any air underneath it. And it's even more important when you center multiple pieces like this, because you don't want to trap any air in here between the layers. So now I'm going to make sort of a very shallow pyramid shape here, and the reverse on the piece, the bowl that I'm going to put on top of it. And I want to make sure that it's completely even and smooth here. So I may even use a whip here to smoothen it. So just taking off the slip. So basically, so we have a very smooth and even surface here to put the next piece on top of that. So I think that should be good. Now we're ready to add the next bowl, the next ball of clay on top of this. And then we just need to center that. And then there will be one piece, one big piece that is totally centered, hopefully. So now we're ready with the second ball of clay. I'm going to try and see if I can hit the very center of this. The more centered it is, the easier the trimming or the centering is going to be, and glue them together. So see, these have a inverted pyramid shape, not that much. Same thing here, just the right way. And these two together is going to hopefully make sure I don't get any air bubbles in here. So, and again, going to clap it into center a little bit to begin with. And so now we're ready to try and center this. See, now I'm just focused on that upper part. I'm not so focused on the lower part, because that is already centered. That did get out of center a little bit when I hammered the top on, but I'll fix that in the end. And yeah, it is a lot of work moving around this much clay. It is a little bit on the dry side, but in terms of stability, it's actually good. In terms of how much I have to work, it's not, but yeah, well, that's a trade-off. In fact, this clay was way too dry. It dried out for me. So I had to rehydrate it. I put it into a bag with some water, left it there for a couple of weeks, and then I had to wetch it up again. So that's another one of the challenges I gave myself this time, because it is not a fresh factory-made bag of clay. So it can give me some challenges, but I'm hoping for the best. As always, I'm optimistic. Some would say naive. So I think it actually looks pretty good now. It is, as always, important, of course, to have the clay as centered as possible, because if it's not even now, it's going to get even worse when it gets bigger. I'm going to see if I can make it a little bit wider before I open up, because I think I want the base to be almost as wide as the bat. Now, as I mentioned in the beginning, there are two factors in place when aiming for the right width. I know that I have 60 centimeters in my kiln, minus whatever I need for my fingers. So maybe 56 or something like that. But of course the clay will shrink when it dries. We all know that. But with a white bowl, what also happens is that the sides will raise when it dries. And that's because it dries faster in the rim than it does in the foot. So it will raise a little bit. And for a white bowl like this, in my experience, it can actually be quite a lot. So several centimeters. So I think I'm aiming for more than 60 centimeters. I'm not sure I can reach that, but I'm aiming for that and hoping that by the time I need to fire it, it have shrunk and raised enough to fit. The gamble I'm willing to take. So you see, now the width of the base is almost as wide as the bed. This is much wider than what I did in my last tries. I can see that there's a little bit of air bubbles in here. I'll see if I can get rid of them right away. Yeah, something like that. And that's a problem about this rehydrated clay. There could be some bubbles in it, but since I'm not going to leave any of the walls very thin, I don't think that's going to be a problem. We'll see. Time will tell, as always. So now I'm using the palm of my hand. Normally I would just use my thumbs, but there's just too much clay to move. So you could either use the palm of your hand or you could use your elbow. Some potters do that. But I think I'm going to start with the palm of my hand. And we're going to keep a sponge in there because it's going to dry out when I do this. And it is summer in Denmark. We have one of the few summer days and it's actually quite warm. I think it's close to 30 degrees Celsius. So that's why I sort of chose to undress a little bit. I hope you can live with that. And I'm beginning to sweat. It is a lot of work. So yeah, it's drying out a little bit for me. So I'm gonna push it more. Yeah, I'm scraping off a little bit of clay and that's okay. That's one of the reasons I started out with that much clay. I knew this would happen. I also want to make sure that it doesn't get too wide now, because if it gets too wide now, I'm going to lose the grip of it and the centrifugal power is just going to throw it out. So I want to make sure that I keep it sort of narrow here to begin with. So it can be really difficult to judge how thick the bottom is for a big bowl like this. So I'm just using a potter's nail. I push it down, put my finger where it ends, take it out, and then I can see. And it's actually pretty good now. It's about 1.5 centimeters. So I definitely don't want to make it any thinner because that is actually one of the mistakes I made in the past. I made the bottom too thin and then I couldn't, it didn't survive the whole drying and all that. So definitely don't want to make it any thinner. And I'm just gonna move my hands over it a few more times to just compress the bottom. Because no matter how thick or thin it is, the more compressed it is, the less likely it is that it will crack during the drying and the firing. So I'm just going to move the camera so you can see what goes on inside. I also sometimes use a rib. This is a semi-soft rib to just make sure that the curve inside is smooth and also helps compress the bottom. So see, this is a lot of slip, very wet clay. So it's nice to get rid of that. So now you see, now we have a smooth curve, and I think that always looks the best. So now, as you see, we have a almost vertical side, and that's what I want. I actually wanted to go in a little bit because I can always make it wider. That's easy. But if it gets too wide too early, then at least I think it's very difficult to control. So now I'm just making sure that it's still very centered, because at this point we definitely don't want any unevenness. But I think it looks okay. So let's just, for the fun of it, see how wide it is. Now, it's probably about the size of the bed. So yeah, it's about 30 centimeter, maybe a little more, 32 centimeter. So basically, to reach 60 centimeter, we need 15 centimeter more on each side. So it needs to get out here, which I still hope optimistically it's doable. So first off, I'm still going to push in the sides a little bit because I don't want to lose control. So it's going to go up just a little bit inwards. And now I'm going to make the first pull. I'm going to have the sponge in my hand. I'm starting out by pushing in the bottom because I want to get some of that clay in there. And then we're going to push it. I'm going to take it easy because this is a highly crocked stoneware. So the general rule that you probably hear, that you should be able to pull it in no more than 2 pulls, which is normally a good goal to have. It doesn't really apply to this big bowl with this kind of stoneware. You can make a lot more pulls. You can play around with this clay for a long time before it weakens. So I'm compressing the rim because we want to make sure that it is even as we pull it up. So again, gonna push in the button. I'm gonna spend some time until I feel that it's completely even. So I don't start pulling before it's very even. And then I can start pulling. Also, I don't want to get it too thin at the top. It's not very thin now, but because we're gonna widen it so much, I mean, if we widen it to twice the size, it's gonna be a lot longer, then it's gonna be thinner, of course. So we don't want to make it too thin. So we can still push in a lot at the bottom. There's still a lot of clay in here, a lot more than we need. So yeah, it's slowly getting there. And again, gonna compress the rim. This is gonna eat some of the height, but it's just gonna make it much more stable. And one mistake that I often make is that when I'm pulling, of course, I'm applying a lot of force down here. But then I keep applying the force too long up. And then at this point, it gets too weak. And then it will flop. So it's very important that you don't push too much when you go up. You can push a lot when you're down here, but then when you get up, you need to loosen that grip a little bit. See, right about here, you have to loosen the grip. And then when you get to the very top, you can push a little bit more again. So, I also want to clean the water on the inside because, of course, it drips down there. And it's fine in a way, but the longer it stays there, the more it's going to weaken the button. And that's going to contribute to cracking as well. So, we don't want to be a little bit careful with that. So see, it's still going inward a little bit, and that's fine. So we still have a lot of clay down here, and I want to see if I can move some of that. You can stop on the way if you just let go very slowly, then it's no problem, and you can continue where you left. Now it's getting better, but you see, we need a lot of height to get out there. Of course, it's not going to be a high bowl like this, but still, in order to have enough clay, enough height to expand it, we need to do that. It's getting a little bit too dry on the inside. So it's definitely getting better now, and it's still sort of even-ish. Now, a really good potter would be able to pull out more clay from the bottom. And even though I could maybe do it, I'm afraid that it's like maybe this thick, so maybe an inch thick or a little less. But I would be afraid of pulling out more, not so much because of how it should look in the end, but because it will be too little clay to carry all that weight, I'm afraid. So I'm going to leave it with this thickness now, and I'm just going to even out the wall to make sure that I don't have any thin areas or not any areas where it's too thick. I think I'll move a little bit of clay up here. I think it was a little bit too conservative about how much clay to move with the upper thirds, but again, it's easier to move some more clay than it is to sort of move it back into an area where there was too little. So now the question is if it's high enough to get the width that I'm after. Well, we're gonna find out very soon. Now, as I expand this, I will have to remove a little more. I will have to grind it off with a trimming tool, because otherwise I'm going to get this bump on the inside, right here on the inside. So, because the clay inside won't be able to move out. So when I get it a little bit wider, maybe I'll dry it a little bit, then I can trim off a little bit of that clay here before I do the final shaping. So now I think we're ready to expand it. And there's really two ways you can do that. You can either expand it from the bottom, and then put out the walls. But I found that doing it the other way, expanding the top first and then expanding further down the side, actually appear a little more easy to me. So I'm going to go the easy way. But again, I'm just going to compress the rim. So I'm going to be moving it with this rim or rib. Just going to move out the top here. Going to have a sponge on the outside. Try and hold my hands as steady as possible. And you can see already now how much it's thinning out the width of the rim, of course, because it's much wider now than it was just a moment ago. And then I need a little more water on the inside. Then we can slowly expand that. Move it down the side. Like this. So even though it still seems like very little, we still gained like 4 or 5 centimeter just by doing this. Now, this is just the first expansion, so I'm going to take it very slowly. There's no rush with this, at least not for me. And I'm being careful not to run it too fast. And I'm just gonna try and expand it here. Now I need to follow up down here on the bottom. Oh, now I lost my rib here. I need to follow up on the bottom, because if I get too much of a tulipan shape here, it won't be able to carry its weight. So I'm just gonna see if I can do that. Yeah, you see, that's much better. I can still move it a little bit down here. But now I'm beginning to get a little bit of that bump on the inside. I will see if I can push it out a little more, but then we need to cut a little bit down here. I may actually be able to get away with it without cutting. So we'll see. It's gonna be more and more difficult to reach over here. That's one of the difficulties of making a white bowl. So we're gonna expand it more here. Yeah, and it's still relatively even. It will end up being a little bit wobbly, but as longer you can keep it very even, the better, of course. But you see now, I think the thickness of the wall now is about half of what it was when we started out. And this is just based on a width of, let me see here. Well, it's 45 now. So we actually expanded it 7.5 centimeter just now. So on each side, which is pretty good. So gonna expand it a bit more down here. Now at this stage, it's gonna be tricky because I need it to be wider, but it's also getting a lot more fragile. So what I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna scrape off the slip that is on the surface, both inside and out. And then I'm gonna leave it just spinning very slowly for, well, a little while. It's quite warm, so it won't take so long. But just gonna drink a cup of coffee and just let it firm up a little bit. Because even without drying it, I could dry it with a heat source, air blower or gas if you want to do that. But even without doing that, the clay will still firm up a little bit, and the water particles will distribute within the clay particles, and that's gonna make it a little stronger. So therefore, I can expand it more. So I'm just gonna let it spin now for a little bit, and have a cup of coffee, and then get back to it and do the last expansion. So now I'm back again, and it had time to firm up a little bit. I do think I will cut a little bit away underneath it because it will make it more easy to get a smooth inside. Because if you have too much clay out here, that part of the pot in here won't be able to get pushed out. And then you will get this little bump. Some call it a beginner's shoulder. I'm not sure I like that term. It's sort of like rude. But I'll just take off a little bit here. I think that's helping. Let's see. And you have to give it time because with a big bowl, a big pot of any kind, it takes time to get all the way around. And you don't want to go too fast either. So this takes a little bit of time. Yeah, I think that's better because now I can actually push out the lower part here, I think. I will try at least. So that's all I can do. Try and try and try. And up here, of course, you have to be careful not to push it too much and not to go too fast. Yeah. Yeah, I think that was actually good. And that was sort of the challenge that I told you about in the beginning because it's not reclaimed, but was rehydrated. So that means that there is a little bit of inconsistencies in the clay, but I think we'll get away with it. It actually looks very smooth and nice on the inside. Of course, it's difficult to see from that angle. I'll show you when we get to the end, but definitely looks very good. I'm optimistic. I think we're still a bit away from the final width, but interesting to measure it now. Yeah, it's almost 50 centimeter. So I would like it to be 10 centimeter wider. It is still a bit optimistic, but let's see if we can do that. I'm trying not to use too much water now because with this size and this much clay hanging over the edge, I'm really careful not to weaken the clay too much. I think it looks really good. The whole shaping of it is better than what I previously did with these big bowls. But you know, even if the inside doesn't get perfect, with very big open wide bowls like this, you can easily do some trimming on the inside. I know some potters will tell you never to trim the inside of a pot, but you know, whatever works, works. And trimming big bowls like this on the inside actually works pretty well. So I'm not going to hold on to that. So yeah, we didn't get it much wider, but we got the whole smoothness of the curve here much better. So I'm still gonna try and see if we can. I think now the question is again, should I just keep widening it at the top, or should I try and follow up in the bottom? And I think I have to do that first because otherwise I'm afraid that it will flop. Yeah, I don't want it to be too wet. On the other hand, was actually getting a little bit too dry now, so my hands were like sticking onto the clay. So that's also a danger, because then if it there's a dry spot and they hold onto the clay, then you're gonna push it out of shape, and that's not good either. And you see, it's of course a little bit wobbly, but actually not that much. Now I have to unfold it to measure it. Now it's over 50. So I would still prefer for it to get like 5 centimeter bigger on each side. So I need to get it out here because that will leave me like something like this. Yeah, this would be 60. So this is what we need more. And it's not going to be easy. But who said it should be easy? So now it's 54. Yeah, almost 54. So I'm not quite at the width that I would prefer, but it's definitely getting there. I still have a small air bubble here. Yeah, should be good. And at this stage, of course, you have to be very careful with the speed because if I accidentally speed it up, it will be thrown out of shape completely. So very slow. And of course, it takes time to get a full round. So take it easy. But now I see that it's not collapsing, but it feels like it's getting close to it. So again, I think I will need to let it firm up a little bit. a little bit more before I move on. I just want to make sure that the inside is even. So yeah, I think, let me just measure it before I let it dry a little bit. So yeah, it is 55 centimeters. So I already beat my own record. So that was good. But I do think I can expand it just a little bit more. I would like to get a little bit closer to the 60, but I'm just gonna let it firm up a little bit more. The thing is, unlike porcelain, you can actually work for hours, even days with stoneware. So I could cover it up with plastic, leave it for tomorrow, and it will firm up a lot more, and I will be able to expand it maybe even more. But I'm too impatient for that right now, so I'm just gonna let it firm up here in the warm climate we have now, and get back maybe half an hour or something. Now I'm back again for the very last part. I hope, I expect I probably can't work this much more. And as I mentioned, it's about 54 something. So I would like it to be 3 centimeter wider in both sides. So that will give me 6 and I will reach 60. I could just try and extend it here, flatten it out, but I think I need to follow up on the lower part first. So I'll try and push that out, see if it's possible. It should be, it's not super thick here, so I think it's possible. I'll try that. But first, I want to clean this rib a little bit, so I don't, because if it's not too clean, then you have uneven edges here, and they're gonna scratch like little holes in the clay. I definitely don't want that. And it's really tricky to reach everything when it's this wide. And again, be very careful with speed. Down here, it actually takes quite a lot of pressure to move that clay out. But I'm using my hand up here at the top to make sure that it doesn't fall over. At least I'm trying to. So I think that helped a little bit. I'll just try again, do the opposite. So use a sponge and my fingers on the inside and use the rib on the outside. You have to be very careful. As always, don't attack the clay or let go of the clay too fast. Release slowly. And otherwise, if you do it too fast, you will push it out of shape. One thing I'm actually impressed with is how even it is. I mean, you can see now that it's spinning around, that it's surprisingly even, I would say. I was expecting it to be a little more wobbly. Let's see if I actually manage to make it any bigger at all. I did. Maybe 1.5 centimeter. I'm not sure. I don't think I can push it any further out here. I think there's still too much clay down there. I should have scraped off maybe a little more. But now I'm afraid to do it because it's so deep on the side, underneath here, that I'm not sure I can do that. But I do think that I can lay it out just a little bit. it's risky. It's very risky to do it at this stage. And worst case, it's gonna collapse. And it's gonna end up like a very small bowl or nothing. So wish me luck again. I'm gonna try and lay it out here. I think I'll need to shift my hand, so I use my strong right hand and lay this out. And then follow up inside here. I really don't think I dare to make it any wider. It is 58 centimeter now. That is really the biggest one I have ever made. So I sort of succeeded. I didn't reach 60, so it should have been 1 centimeter wider. But now the risk of it collapsing, flopping over, is very, very high. You can see it's always almost getting a little bit uneven now. So all in all, I'm pretty happy. I made the biggest ball ever. And now I'll let it dry slowly. I will start by just letting it spin, because by spinning it, there could be a little bit of wind. It's not too bad in here, but it may dry uneven, and then it will be very uneven after drying. But by letting it spin, then you will make sure that it dries evenly. But it have to spin very, very slowly. And I'll do that at least until tomorrow, and then maybe I will take it off the wheel. And eventually I will trim it. I did get a little bit of that beginner's shoulder in here. It's not too bad, but I do think that I will even it out with inside trimming. And I will, of course, trim it a little bit outside and make sure that the foot looks good and so. Let me know down in the comment if you want to see the trimming and the finishing of this, the firing and the glazing, and see the end result. Just let me know and I'll include that. It will take a few weeks to finish it, but I can follow up with videos about that. So in any case, I hope that you enjoyed my little experiment. And this sure is going to be a very nice bowl for candy. And yes, all my bowls are made for candy. This one makes a very good Friday night. So have a great day and enjoy the summer. See you soon.